Welcome to the Measurement Doctor Podcast. The doctors are in the house. And now your hosts, George and Lori Gill.
And welcome to the Measurement Doctor Podcast, everybody. Hey, Lori, how's it going?
It's good. It's good. It's getting a little chilly out, though.
You know, we do live in Canada.
I know, the high's only supposed to be 14 today, but it's pretty dang windy out there.
It is. Welcome to the podcast today, everybody. I'm George Gill.
I'm Lori Gill.
And today we have a really exciting guest. I love these interviews. They make us look smart.
I know.
It's incredible. I mean, I keep saying that, but we really bring in the talent, and they just make us look really smart.
We get to ask questions and put them in the hot seat.
Right.
I know.
So what's going on? Why don't you just share how this guest came to be? How you ran into this person.
Literally
and then
ran
we'll
into
introduce
her.
her.
And her pretty shoes, too.
And her pretty shoes.
Okay, so our guest speaker today is Tammy Heermann, and I bumped into her at Women's Business Network in Peterborough.
There we go.
Didn't really bump into her. I've been supporting her coming to our event last month.
She was actually speaking live, right?
She did. She spoke live in October. So, and yeah, I, kind of hit it off and thought, wow, the topic that we're going to speak on today is a topic of interest to me. And I thought, what better way to do this than to bring in an expert to guide us through some added tips.
I'm really, really excited actually for today's interview because you're absolutely right. This is a great topic for our audience. It's a great topic for us. It's a great topic for all entrepreneurs. And, from what you told me about Tammy, I'm really excited to dig in and ask her some tough questions and see how she handles us tag teaming her.
It's good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, well, and speaking of pretty shoes, she knocked her shoes off, so, I mean, it was definitely...
She had purple suede shoes. You know how I have a love for cute shoes.
There you go. Okay, why don't you introduce Tammy, and we'll get going here.
Wow. Okay, so Tammy Heermann is a sought-after advisor who helps individuals and organizations get serious about leadership. She has developed pioneering and multiple award-winning programs aimed at changing mindsets, advancing skill sets, and sustaining deliberate practices to achieve high performance. While having significant impact in the C-suite, she is happiest when pushing up and, where am I? Lost my train of thought there because I got so excited about this.
No, you're breathing. You didn't lose your train of thought.
Well, I don't have this all memorized.
Do I need to expand that? Is that like...
Do I have to put on glasses?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Tammy. Here we go. Okay, when pushing up and coming leaders to break through organizational and self-imposed barriers to reach their potential. Her clients express the value of Tammy's down-to-earth, practical style in creating an environment of trust in a room of strangers. So you're really going to find that she is down to earth. Tammy's work developing leaders has included both global consulting and international management roles. Over the course of her career, she has worked with thousands of leaders. She is specifically sought out by Fortune 500 companies for her expertise in gender diversity and programs that accelerate female talent. Evaluate Your Influence, a two-day Women in Leadership experience designed by Tammy, won the 2015 Leadership Excellence Award in the International Firm category by HR.com. In addition to her work with Lee Hect Knightsbridge, Tammy is a faculty member and expert coach for the Women of Influence Advancement Center and also sits on the Women's Leadership Advisory Committee for Women in Communications and Technology. She is a graduate of the London School of Economics with a Master's of Science degree in Personal Management and Industrial Relations and holds an Honors Bachelor of Commerce degree with a double major in Marketing and Human Resources from the University of Saskatchewan. Wow. Welcome Tammy.
So, Tammy, you just finished school last week, I'm gathering.
That's right.
Yeah. Holy moly. My God. I read that. I read your bio, and I thought to myself, I have 3 kids in university right now. I'm like, this woman's parents must be so grateful she finally finished. I don't know. That's a huge education. Now, our listeners, one of the things, down to earth, was really emphasized in your bio, and I'm looking at your view, and I'm thinking, I don't know. You're about as far from the earth as one can get in the city of Toronto. There you go. That beautiful view there. Welcome to the show, Tammy, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to talk a lot about leadership, and I love in your bio how your real passion is to help people break through barriers and grow, because I'm a firm believer that we all have barriers, and it's a daily challenge. And if you don't have barriers, in fact, you're not pushing hard enough, and that's just simply my belief. So I'm really interested to go through this process, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and how you became an advisor, a coach, a speaker? In other words, how does somebody become you? Like, how does that happen?
Absolutely. Thank you, George and Lori. I think part of the the path in terms of getting here and helping organizations and individuals along a number of leadership things is, first of all, I worked in the field. I got the war wounds. I have the stories. So I've held roles in HR management, in HR leadership, in leadership development. I've worked both here in Canada and overseas. I've worked with many leaders, managed them, coached them. And so it's a great thing to be able to say, I've been there and I've done that. When you combine that then with being in consulting for the past 10 years, now I have the great opportunity to learn and look across what are different organizations doing, what's the differences in sectors, and share those experiences, not only my own experiences, but those of other organizations that are doing best practice things with the clients that I serve. And then in terms of, how do you become a speaker? Well, you just have to show passion about these things. So I think when someone really believes in something and they enjoy what they're doing, other people naturally want to hear their messages.
Do you hear that passion?
I do.
I know. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I didn't want you to stop. I was
enthralled.
It's great. I mean, we have questions, but I'm sure you'll cover them. That's awesome. All right. So, and we could do a whole podcast just on leadership, because it's just a great topic all on its own. And it's a word that's being thrown around a lot today that I don't particularly like, because I think there's some definite characteristics there. But I think pre to even leadership, you talked a lot about the war wounds and getting out there, and a lot of that expertise coming from your actual experiences. And I think that's absolutely critical. And a key component to that, which is our focus, our topic today, is networking. And I know you have a lot of expertise on that topic, as well as leadership, but I think it almost comes before leadership, or as part of leadership in a lot of cases. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. The word networking, I think, is one of those words that, makes people's hairs on their neck stand up. I think it's one of the most hated activities right next to public speaking, for example. And what we're finding, especially with the advent of social networking and how the younger generation is really connected, to your point, George, it happens much sooner than entering formal management or leadership roles. So this skill of being able to broaden your network and really build relationships, I think is key for people to start very early in their careers.
Right. Okay, so we took a long intro here with you're talking about my mindset and Tammy's bio and intro, but
how did we get to your mindset?
I don't know. You just kind of made a hint there.
No, it was my mindset.
But now it's time to really focus on this, and I'm glad you did the intro and you mentioned social there, and the fear of networking, because all of those things are really relevant today. And I think our audience will appreciate the fact that we're going to cover each and every aspect of that. Now, obviously, networking is important, and this is something I personally fought for many years of my career, because I'm an introvert. I'm a shy guy, believe it or not. I mean, Lori debates that, but I'm telling you, I'm a shy guy. So I really fought this, but I know it's critical. Why is it so important, do you think, that entrepreneurs specifically and business people force themselves to get good at this? Why is it that critical?
Mm-hmm. I think entrepreneurs kind of get the concept probably more readily than business people, whether they're working inside organizations or for large organizations. It's critical for leaders and for entrepreneurs to understand, how do I have more influence so that I can get capital, so that I can get my brand known in the marketplace, so that I can inform people about solutions and how we can help them, right, with their business needs, and for our own careers. Right? So the notion of networking is critically important because we don't work alone anymore. It's very rare, even for the two of you who sit behind a computer much of the day. Your particular business and organization wouldn't be as successful if you also didn't kind of get out and get known. One of the best learnings I had from a mentor of mine, because I'm like you, George. I fought this notion of networking for many years. I am also an introvert, and the person who helped me see that mindset shift said, "Tammy, don't you want to have more influence?" I said, "Well, of course I do. I want to be more influential." "Well, where do you want to have that influence?" "Well, with the teams that I lead, with my boss, with future senior leaders so that I can get promoted, with my customers, and even in my community." And she said, "How do you expect to do that if people don't know you, and if they don't know you for something, and if they don't know how you can help them?" And so I took this word of networking that just felt so schmarmy and schmoozy and right and unnatural to me, and said, no, this is about building relationships and getting to know people so that I can be more influential and really achieve my goals and the goals of the business. That was the mindset shift for me.
I like it. I like the word influential. I noticed you didn't mention any significant other on the influential. Did you catch that? That's not. Okay, all right. Just putting it out there. Actually, I really like that, and I like the mindset shift of people getting to know you. Often we think about networking as pitching, and I think that's what kind of puts that fear up. And you didn't say that. You said people getting to know me. And I would challenge, in fact, that people get to know you whether or not you like it or not, or whether or not you network or not. The question is, do you want them to get it based on their perception or what you put forward?
That's exactly right. And so we have to manage our own brands and our own credibility and how we're known. And otherwise, it'll just take over and it'll become formed for us, and that's not always how we want it to be. You also talked, George, about what networking is not, and I think so many people think it's about getting the sale or asking for that mentor or getting on that board or getting that capital. Right? If you go in with the goal of thinking that you're going to get something, you won't be perceived as necessarily as someone wants to have in their network.
That's so true. That's so true. So knowing that the importance of networking, and for some people, the lack of time that we have to share of ourselves, what's the best way to begin to start prioritizing networking? And is there a strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Lori, it's like anything, any important activity that we deem we have to work into our calendar, then we just have to be deliberate about it. So some of the tips that I use and I advise others on is start with, if we talk about the informal networking, the lunches, the inviting people out to a coffee or something, a Skype chat, just to get to know people, is schedule it in your calendar at times that seem appropriate for you and your goals. So for me, it's every 2 weeks. I say I will entertain lunch or coffee or a telephone chat with someone I don't know or need to get to know better or wants to know me every 2 weeks. Then if someone comes and says, I think, maybe this one can wait a little bit, I'll say I'm available next month. And they're usually fine with that because networking is long-term. It's not about short-term gains. If it's someone that I'm really hot on or they're really hot on me in terms of connecting, then I'll make more time for it. But for me, it was important to say, no, I got to free up, a half an hour or an hour every 2 weeks to do that. Now, most people think about, that's the informal networking. Most people think about networking as, I got to go to that event or join an association or I have to go to this conference and that's fine. But, but those things are at best once a month, once a year, depending on budget and time. So I would be very, very careful in choosing where you need to be and where you need to get known and where you need to get to know people at those events very, very carefully, because they can be a time drain, an energy drain, and frankly, a money drain if people are just, attending these things at whim versus being very deliberate about, what can I get out of that experience?
You mentioned, I've heard you say it a couple of times now, you're being deliberate. Can you elaborate on what you mean by being deliberate?
Yeah, so we talk about every person, and especially every leader, needs 3 types of networks to be successful. The first one is the operational network. The second is the future focused network. And the third is the career network. So operational is about how do I get my work done? Who do I need to know better or build relationships with better to get the work done? Right? Most people are okay in their operational networks. The second is that future focused network. Who do I need to know in the industry? Where might future business development come from? What's going on with my competitors or in the environment? What subject matter experts can I learn from? It's those future focused issues, right? And the third is the career. What mentors are there to help me? Who's giving me great feedback? Who can I look for as a sponsor to really get to know and they can help advocate on my behalf? Being deliberate means taking a look at which network is strong, which is weaker, and where do I need to build out those relationships better? So being deliberate is, if I could only focus on 2 things or 2 people, this year or this quarter, what are they going to be? Rather than just haphazardly having coffees and going to events.
Wow.
I love setting rules for myself for success, and rules that force me to stay on a pattern that drives towards success. I absolutely love your rule of every 2 weeks. I'm going to implement that right after this call. Every 2 weeks, I have to force meaning force myself, not the other person, but force an engagement, whether it be a lunch, a coffee, or something, and put it in one of those categories of where I want to be deliberate and continue to drive. I love that idea. That is what I call little steps that compound, and I love that whole concept. 2 weeks is doable. 2 weeks is doable for anybody, and I think that's a great point. A really great point. Yeah, love it. Okay, so I already told you that Lori's an introvert and I'm an extrovert.
Really? Is that what you said?
Oh, you remember that, did you? Okay,
No,
it might be
you
the other way around. And
I'm not an extrovert, by the way.
You mentioned the mindset shift, and I get that, but how can extroverts, despite the mind, it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to shift my mind on this. It's another thing to actually take action, walk into a room that has 10 people, 20, 100, doesn't really matter, even 2, and get up and go over and introduce yourself. What are some tips can you give some people that are brand new to networking to make that a little easier, or if not easier, at least a system that they can maybe follow to get them out of that shell, if you will?
So you're talking about the introverts, yeah?
Yeah.
I might be. Okay, let's go with that.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a few. So the first piece is really understanding what venue am I in, and what does that mean in terms of how I have to kind of psych myself up or prepare. So is it a one-on-one conversation, or am I about to go to a large event? Either way, it's about, first of all, preparing in advance in terms of who do I want to meet? What are some good questions that I might want to ask? And how do I just calm myself down to, again, we're back to that shift in mindset to say people are just people. I think we get so freaked out around this person's a CEO, or this person's in a job much higher than me in hierarchy, or this person does something that I know absolutely nothing about. How on earth am I going to talk to them? The other thing I see that people do in terms of freaking themselves out, and a lot of times it's with females, is what am I going to add to the conversation? That's what we this little itty bitty shitty committee that sits on our shoulder that says, what could people possibly want to know about me or from me? Or right? And that's the big shift that we have to do in terms of understanding all of us have value to add. All of us have experiences, and all of us can just learn to get to know each other on personal levels. This one reminds me of a story when I was working inside an organization with a bunch of brilliant software engineers. And our chief scientist was not only brilliant by Mensa definitions, he was also a Juilliard-trained musician. And when I went in to talk to him about I was creating new leadership competencies for the organization, and he was one of the key people that I was interviewing. And at the end of that interview, and you can imagine I was nervous because I thought, what on earth, how am I going to talk to him, this genius of a man? And at the end, he said, wow, Tammy, what you do is really hard. To which I went, what I do is really hard. He's inventing things that don't even exist yet. Right? But we have that understanding now and an appreciation of one another that you're good where you are and I'm good where I am, and we can learn from one another. So I think we need that mindset when we go in to meet people. You might have a different title than me, but we both have value to add in terms of getting to know one another.
I can totally appreciate that, because when I first started with the Women's Business Network, it took me years before I would even say yes to going, because I thought, what value do I have? What could I possibly share? I'm this wallflower who will just sit and watch. And it took me a while, and I had to force myself out of that shell to push myself forward and say, hey, I do have something to share. And not everybody's going to resonate with me, and they're not, vice versa. But I might connect with somebody, and if I can connect with one person and make a difference, to me, that's worth it.
Yeah, and you've just hit on, Lori, a really key strategy for introverts. I think most people, when they think of networking, and let's stick with the example of an event, that you have to go and work the room and hand out cards with reckless abandon. And really, that's not the case. Introverts can have different strategies. We can go in and say, I'm going to have 2 really deep conversations with people versus, flitting around and handing out business cards to 15. It doesn't have to look the same way, the strategies. It's about understanding, what am I there to achieve, and how can I achieve it in my own way?
And it's interesting that you said that, because you could hand out 15 cards and collect 15 cards, but what are you going to do with those cards after the fact? Because you're still going to be scared to reach out and say, hey, I met you at.
That's right.
Right? So what's the point of doing it if that's not a true connection then? It's of no value.
Yeah. The best networkers, and you would have seen, Lori, in the talk that we did together there at the WBN in Peterborough, is understanding what goes into great networking skills. And the first piece is the mindset. And most people, say, yeah, okay, either I'm good at that or I have some places to improve. The next is the skill set, which we can talk about in terms of, how do you tell your story? How do you have confidence? How do you offer up help? But the third piece is what you're talking about around what are the processes that good networkers do. And they're organized. They come back with those cards and say, okay, I'm going to use some sort of system to just say, how are they and I connected? What might I reach out to them in the future for? So they do that next little extra step to say, how can we maintain a connection, and how might we be useful to one another in the future?
It's funny that you mentioned the business cards, because I always laugh when I go to events, and they're usually 1 or 2 day or 3 day events, and I'll go in the washroom by about halfway through the second half of the day, and there'll be business cards plastered all over the place, and I'm thinking,
this is in the guys' bathroom.
What a waste of paper.
They just don't get it. They need to spend more money on their business cards so they won't give them away so haphazardly. That's all I can say. I like to, when I meet somebody, because I have my short-term memory isn't as much as I like it to be, so I'll take the card after meeting somebody and just jot a word down that triggers a follow-up when I get back 4 days, 5 days later, and send an email out to that person. I can mention something personal that we had in that conversation that kind of triggers it. It's kind of a little, it seems to help me as a tidbit to kind of remember, because you meet so many people too at those events that sometimes it's tough.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And of course, who's great at this is salespeople, because their job is to really connect with a lot of people and understand their needs. And so they'll have other strategies in terms of adding them to their categorized databases, whatever they're using to do that. For me, where thought leadership is really an important piece, I'll quickly send out an article or something, to someone just to say, hey, we were talking about this, and I thought this might be helpful. So again, depending on what your goals are and what area of business you're in, use a strategy to maintain connection.
You're bringing up a really good point there, is that on networking, and you've kind of hinted towards it through everything you've said so far, Tammy, is that you're giving value. And I think that's really key in the conversation as well. Not only do you have value to give in the networking purpose, but you're also providing value and extending on those relationships by sending something out, which I think is absolutely key too.
Yeah. When we talk about what makes a network versus a strategic network, there's a few things we talk about. One of them is, how diverse is it, right? If you only kind of hang out and connect with people that are similar to you or in the same business or industry, that's nice for getting really technical expertise, but really, how are you getting connected to worlds where you can get a lot more information or ideas or people? Another area is what you're talking about is how many bridges do I have in my network? Bridges are those natural networkers. They see the world through a lens that is about connection, and they love introducing people to other people. Mm-hmm. And so having those connectors or those bridges in your network and becoming one yourself makes you extremely valuable and influential to have in other people's networks.
It comes up, that book that you read, was it The Power of Influence or something, where it broke you down into different categories? What was that?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
I was looking on the shelf to see if it was there.
To me. Yeah.
And you did that test, and you said, "Oh, Lori, you're a connector, and I'm this."
Yes. It's a miss. I should have wrote that down.
I know.
I'd love to know.
I will find that book, and I will share it in the show notes of the episode, so that everybody can. I think something about the power of influence or something like that. But anyways, I will find that. But now that we've gone down the path of introvert, extrovert, it's only fitting that we ask, is there a difference between how men and women network?
Yeah, because you mentioned the one thing. Does it go further than that?
Yeah, so the research has shown a couple of key distinctions, and I'll talk about that and the impact of that. So one of them is that women tend to rely on networks for what's called psychosocial support, literally for support mechanisms. And if you look at kind of how the world evolved and how women were the strength and pillars of community, we really are wired for community connection in terms of, if you need to get a babysitter quickly, or you need to get a plumber reference, or you need to get something within the community, or you need someone, a good shoulder to cry on, we have those strong networks in spades. And so the skill of networking for women is there. What we don't tend to do is use it in the business world. We tend to think, I've got a home network and I've got a business network, and never the two shall meet, like the Seinfeld episode where George was so concerned that his worlds were colliding, his personal world and his business world were colliding, and he didn't like that. That's the reality. We have one interconnected network that we need to own. So for women, we have to learn to use those relationship and networking skills we have in the business world and not be scared to ask for the business, ask for connections, ask for meetings, those kinds of things. It's also been shown that women have smaller and tighter networks where men will have kind of larger, broader, more acquaintance-based networks. And that's how the world works, right? We all know the term 6 degrees of separation.
Yes.
And in Canada, it's actually even smaller than that. And I think we're 3 to 4 degrees of separation.
That exchange rate, it gets us every time. Yeah.
So for women, I think it's just being able to kind of broaden that notion of weaker ties or weaker acquaintances, and then having the confidence to ask of things from our network and give back to things in the network as well.
So is it on the guy's side? What do you want to know?
Well, I'm kind of curious about your comment on the Canadian thing. Do you notice a difference in networking across the border in the U.S. versus Canada?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure that I have noticed that much of a difference. Certainly, when I do gender work with with U.S. as well as global organizations, I tend to see, between U.S. and Canada, that the female and the gender difference is consistent in terms of being able to, build broader networks, to that fact, actually all around the world. But I don't know of any specific differences between U.S. and Canada.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Okay, so you mentioned 3 categories of networks that we should be building. Is there anything else we should be considering? So if I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to put a plan together. I know networking is critical. It's important to my business. I haven't really done any. So where do I start? And you mentioned, future networks, current opportunities, all of these things. How do I break down so that I can start on that 2-week plan, the categories that I should focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. So after thinking about kind of the 3 categories, operational, feature focused, and career, most people try to bite off a lot more than they can chew, and they might start making lists and lists of people. In the work that I do with leaders, I say, at this point, if you can choose 2 internal and 2 external, if you're in an organization, then internal, and accomplish those by a certain time period, that it's reasonable for you, whether it's the year or the quarter, then just start with that. So what are 2 relationships that either I need to strengthen or that I need to build? And then how do I, people I need to find, types of people I need to find, then identify how you will do that. So I believe in starting really small and focused. If you can knock those off, good. Then continue on with kind of your next 2. Otherwise, I've seen people come away with lists of 12 to 14 to 20 contacts or places, and they get overwhelmed and they just don't do it. So I'm a big proponent of, think of the 3 types of categories. Think of 2 internal if it applies to you, and 2 external, and then work on that.
I like it. Keep it simple. No analysis for paralysis. Absolutely.
Okay. So, any tips on how you just did that one. So how does social media fit into today's networking compared with traditional networking as we know it? What are some of the big nuances that we need to be aware of?
Yeah. So what wonderful, tools like LinkedIn is the most popular right now in terms of business, and and others, Facebook and whatnot, have done, is really created a more mechanized and easily organizable system for us in terms of our network contacts. Most, whether you're a recruiter or an HR person or anyone in business, would say if you're not on LinkedIn, you do not exist. It is now the single biggest recruiting tool. Especially the biggest sector represented is in financial services. It's a great way to get out, thought leadership. It's a great content mechanism to search up. So you can Google, but you can also go on LinkedIn to really look for content. So it's become quite a big engine. I think what people have to realize is there's strategies around how you use those tools. So for example, some people really want to maintain a close connected network where I know everyone in my LinkedIn system, so that if you ask me to refer, I can actually say, yeah, I know Lori. She's great. I will refer you to her, and I feel comfortable with referring you to her. So some people use it that way. Other people, and I would be one in this category, use it as a content dissemination strategy, right? So I'm pretty much going to say yes to 75, 80% of the people that ask to connect with me, because I want to get out our messages, our content, the things I'm writing about, to a broad audience as possible. So there's no right or wrong answer to how you use it, but you have to manage it just like you would any other network. So if someone says to me, can you connect me with, Joe? And I might say, actually, I don't know Joe, and I don't feel comfortable making that connection. However, here's a way I can maybe help you to da-da-da-da-da. So we still have to be respectful. It's not going to fix everything in terms of networking, but it can be a very, very valuable tool, and we have to understand how people are using it.
Okay, so
George isn't a big social network kind of guy.
He's not.
He's not.
He's not. Yeah.
Despite I understanding its place, and I don't think its place is necessarily what most people think it is. especially when it comes to businesses. But that's a topic for another day. I am curious, though, because I know entrepreneurs. Now, I'm on LinkedIn, and I have a fairly large network, a smaller percentage that I actually know and would recommend or what have you, because as like you, I get a lot of invites and what have you, and just as long as you're not trying to send me $2 billion to transfer through a bank account, I'll probably accept you. But I know entrepreneurs and business people and managers and C-type personalities that don't even have a LinkedIn account. And I get the HR, but help me understand if my role is a leader of an organization, small or big, doesn't really matter, why do I want to be working on LinkedIn? And we're picking on LinkedIn, and I actually really do like LinkedIn, but why?
Yeah. So it always goes back to what are the goals and the objectives of that person. So if you talk about a CEO or a business leader, a lot of them now are wanting to connect to their communities. So it could be internal, it could be the geographic community that they're in, or the product community, the people that are buying their goods and services, and they want to kind of connect through statements around their brand or whatnot. So it's a way, one, to get out and, to your point earlier, control the messaging around an organization or their brand, right? That's why Facebook is so, companies have Facebook pages, right? So it's a way to kind of control that a little bit more in as much as possible in today's world where things spiral out of control on social media. And it's a way to find talent. A lot of, on a practical level, because it's become so natural now to kind of search people up on tools like that, is if I'm having a conversation with someone that I don't know, I quickly, Google them, or I go on LinkedIn and I say, hey, I just LinkedIn you, and now I feel like I kind of know who I'm talking to over the phone. And no one is appalled by that. They're like, oh, I'm going to do it too. It's a way to kind of get connected with people in such a virtual way. Then you can talk about the whole job search, and really understanding where we are in the market as individuals, and how we're placed, and who might be interested in us, and what other organizations we might be interested in. Right? It's a great gold mine for kind of understanding our market positioning as well.
And I really agree with what you just said. Is after I meet somebody, I will often go on LinkedIn and check out their profile and see what kind of information they're putting out there, and the way they talk and the way they communicate. I think that's absolutely 100%. Absolutely. Do you let me back up. There we go. Okay, let's start that again. Live.
Yes.
All right. So
in Memorex.
In Memorex. Do you feel that people are hiding behind social from a networking perspective, though? Because I fear that it's really easy to be somebody you're not, behind that computer, but that can often take a preference over getting out there and actually shaking somebody's hand and meeting people in person. I guess my question is really, if I only have so much time in a day, what is the value of social versus in person? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So social media, let's again go back to the LinkedIn for Business. It's not going to solve all the problems. What I sometimes talk to it about is it's really put online the old Rolodex, right, of cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I think what it's morphing into, and we're seeing that as these sites are now increasing their content, they're making acquisitions for content, it's become another larger database for people. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to find an article or an expert on this. I'm going to go in and find people who work in an organization in this kind of role, so that I can connect with them, either for job searching, or because I want to talk to another expert out there for that future focus network. Hey, what are you guys doing in this area that I'm not doing? So it's become a really big content repository. I think that's how we can use it. In terms of hiding, your question around hiding behind it, it's just like the good old paper resumes, that are still floating around. We can write anything we want on our bios or our accounts, our profiles. But yeah, you have to meet people to actually figure out, are they going to be a fit, or can we help one another in our networks? I never accept invites from people who don't post a picture, who don't have their profiles really fleshed out, because then it says to me you're not taking it seriously.
Right. That's fair. That's really fair.
And I'm always keen on, especially advising people, make sure that your profile, especially your profile pictures, are current. Don't have it from 20 years ago. You're not the same.
That amazes me how many people do that.
I know.
It's like,
you meet them in person.
You meet them in person and you don't even recognize them.
Wow, you look great.
You're not 22. Okay, so what happened?
I know.
All right, so do you set a time that you put on your social media activity, like LinkedIn or that kind of stuff? Do you have a discipline like you do on your 2-week rule? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. So for me, again, because my strategy is around content dissemination, it is in the morning. Right? So when I come in and you kind of scan your emails, I scan, how are my posts doing? What posts of my colleagues can I refer into my network, or retweet, or whatever it may be? What other interesting thought leadership is coming? So I'll do that kind of first thing in the morning, coffee, and then that's where commuting time also is a good use of time. I always used to say, one of my colleagues, God, how do you get so much content out? Well, it's because she took the bus and the subway home versus me, who was driving, right? So it was really a good time well spent for her.
Yeah, maximizing efficiency.
That's why you want to be chauffeured around all the time.
Yeah, among other reasons. Okay, Tammy, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see people making when they're trying to get better at networking and actually take on the objective of networking?
Yeah, so I'd say the first one is really around thinking that they're out to get something in the short term, right? So I've had people literally come up to me and say, can you be my mentor? And I'm like, how about we get to know each other a little bit first, and even see if I can help you, or you're, we can help each other. Or trying to get a sale, through a specific lunch or coffee chat. So networking has to be viewed as something that you build over the long term, and when opportunities come out of it and arise, then that's great. So that's one of the key mistakes I see people make. I think the second one is really not being prepared with different versions of your story. So if I'm going to if I'm going to a technical event where there's a lot of people there that are kind of just like me or get what I do, then sure, I can talk about things more technically. But if I'm going to something broader, I'm not going to say, hi, my name is Tammy, I'm a leadership development expert, I'm a vice president of this. People aren't even listening to me anymore. I would say something like, hi, I'm Tammy, and I help organizations build better leaders, or I help organizations get really serious about leadership. Then they're intrigued, and then we can talk about, what do you do and how do you help? So having different versions of your story that are really short and concise to have a natural sounding dialogue where people will want to find out more.
I love that. That's like good copywriting.
Yes.
Yeah, you're talking the language. Yeah, that's excellent. Mm-hmm. All right.
You want me to do the last one?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
What questions haven't we asked you?
Yeah,
that we should have?
Hey!
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if this is a question. I think it's something that we haven't really talked about, was the best networkers really don't view this as an activity. We've talked a lot about strategies and tips and getting it in your calendar, which is great, but it's about a lens that you see the world through, a lens of connection. And then this was the big, shift for me, and I think for others that are getting started in this world. And so the best example I have of that is a woman who was speaking on networking at a program that I was running with some high potentials. And she came in and she talked about having a plumber come into her house to fix the toilet in her basement. And most people kind of show the plumber the work and they kind of leave and let them do their thing. And because she sees the world as connection, she was chatting to him, and they started talking about boarding hockey players and how his brother-in-law and she kind of probably might know each other, because boarding international hockey players is actually a small community here in Toronto. And lo and behold,
Peterborough too.
Peterborough too. And so she found out that this guy's brother-in-law is actually on a board of a board she wanted to get on. And she said, oh my God, would you feel comfortable connecting me with your brother-in-law? And he said, oh, of course I would. And subsequently, she got a placement on that board. And so, we can learn and find connections from anyone that we meet. And so we have to start viewing our world that way and be interested and curious about people versus thinking this is about an event or setting up a coffee. I mean, it is, and it's how do we just become more curious about getting to know people and seeing how our worlds collide. I think that's...
It truly is a small world.
It is, yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Seeing the world through a different lens. That is a great analogy. Often you're so right. People look at networking as, what am I going to get out of it? And really the reality comes down to just start caring about what other people are saying. I mean, if that's your first step, that'll change the way you network entirely. And that's an awesome story. I really like that. I like that. Yeah.
And you liked the lens aspect from the photography standpoint,
I
too.
I do. I can resonate with it. Absolutely. Sometimes I want to zoom in, and sometimes I want a wide angle, and sometimes I want to leave the room. Just kidding. Okay. Real wide angle.
So we always end the interview with, if you could give one piece of advice that our listeners could take action on today that would benefit their business, what advice would you give?
Yeah, so to benefit their business, I would say really go back to and think about those three types of networks, the operational, the future-focused, and the career. And I remember, Lori, in our session that there was an entrepreneur who talked about, I know one day I will retire, and if I don't find some young accountant who's going to be interested in me growing him and taking over and buying my business, I'm never going to be able to retire. And so it was a big light for her to say, I got to start building that talent now. So think about the three types of networks and where do you need to start putting some time and energy towards.
That goes back to our interview with Kevin on succession planning. And we never really thought of that from a networking perspective, but if you're thinking about your future, you call that future?
Operational, future-focused, and career.
And career, yeah. If you think about it like that, they really kind of go hand in hand.
They do, absolutely, and it's bringing in new talent to take over one day.
All right, Tammy, that has been awesome. But before we let you go, and thank you so much for taking the time today with us, we need to put you in the hot seat.
Just one more time.
And head into the examination room.
It's time for the examination room.
Are you scared?
Am I what?
Scared.
Am I scared?
Yeah.
No, bring it on.
I got that. I knew she wasn't scared. I could tell. Just every guest has been scared. Wow.
Well, not
I thought you were going to ask to see my shoes, actually.
So. Do you have some super cute shoes on today?
I do, actually.
All right. Fill Tammy in what we do here.
Okay, so in the examination room, we share a quote and we ask for your take on that quote. And we also give our take on the quote too. It's just you get to go first.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, and the quote is actually by somebody that we've met and spoke to and got to see speak live, who is what I'd like to refer to as a master networker, Mr. Harvey McKay. And Harvey had it, going back to our story before I get into the quote, Harvey had a great system for networking that he would never eat lunch alone. Incredible system, right? But that one's a little hard to live up to. But he literally would he never eats lunch alone. If he's in a city, he doesn't know anybody, he walks into a business, introduces himself, and strikes up a conversation. Wow, just master networker. Anyways, the quote is, "My golden rule of networking is simple. Don't keep score." Harvey McKay.
Yes.
What do you think, Tim?
I love that quote, and I think it gets back to that networking is a long-term game. That it's not about keeping score in terms of what can I get out of this this particular situation. It's about the long game. right? How do I build relationships so at some point in the future, our worlds might connect and we might be able to help one another.
I like it too.
I like it.
And in that, if you're keeping score, there's like a checklist, and then you're not really being real. You're not being true to the whole relationship as a whole. You're only thinking, what's in it for me, not how can we share and grow together.
Absolutely. I'll share a personal story. One of the ways that I kind of gotten better, I don't want to say mastered because it's an ongoing journey, but I've gotten better at networking, is I've changed my mental focus to being caring and interested in other people, and really trying to understand who they are, what they are, how they became where they are, and I have a great fascination for that now, and it's really kind of evolved through my desire to get past my fears of networking. So it's been very interesting. As I progressed down that path, I also learned something very disappointing, and that is most people don't hear other people talk. And at first I started to take that personally in networking, like I had no value to give because they weren't hearing me, they were talking over me. You could tell when you network. And I very quickly realized is that not everybody's at the same place as you. So maybe they haven't figured out what networking is, but don't chalk that up to a score list. Just chalk it up to a future category that maybe one day they'll come back to you and you'll build on that relationship. Just right now, they're not ready, and that's okay. Not everybody's going to say yes to the sale. Not every person you introduce yourself to is going to become a close friend, but once you start putting yourself out there, you're going to grow through small steps. And I think that's a critical quote, that you have to keep that in mind to be successful. That's awesome. All right, so Tammy, how can people reach out to you and get in touch with you if they need to learn more about networking or leadership or any of the other strategies that you help businesses develop and overcome for challenges?
Absolutely. So there's a few ways. I'm on Twitter at Tammy Heermann, on LinkedIn, same Tammy Heermann, and certainly reach out to Lee Hect Harrison Knightsbridge, where anyone here will know how to connect with me. But Tammy.Heermann at lhhknightsbridge.com.
Okay.
Awesome.
And we'll get that in the show notes as well on episode 44.
I believe we are.
I believe we are. Thanks again, Tammy, for joining us. That was fantastic, and I know our audience is going to get a lot out of that information.
I know I did.
And
I told you she was down to earth, right?
She is, despite her view.
I know.
All right.
We almost had a lakeside view. It was just too bright.
Too bright.
Yeah. So we were going to share a similar view, but no buildings.
Yeah, no buildings.
Okay.
All right, until next time, don't do a thing.
In business or in life.
Unless you're measuring it. Have a great day, everybody. Ciao for now.
Thank you.